Welcome back, everybody, to UPressPlay Sports. I'm your host and outgoing sports editor, Richard Pereira. Uh, Joining me today is photo editor Eston Parker and incoming sports editor Bryce Totz and staff writer Kevin Garcia. Hey guys, how are you feeling for this last episode of the semester for the sports podcast?
Feeling pretty good. Feeling good today.
Yeah, feeling great.
I'm glad to be here. I haven't been part of them yet, so it's nice to join.
Yeah, it's great to have you on here, Bryce. So for today's episode, with it being the last one for this semester, we're gonna do a little differently. Since we're closing in at the end of 2021, a lot of sports have gone down, and there were many great moments to take away from it, especially in FAU sports. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go one-on-one. Think of it as an around the horn style. We each take our turns highlighting each and every moment that happened throughout the year that was great moments for FAU sports, ranging from football, basketball, soccer, and baseball, and even beach volleyball. So starting off this round, we'll be going to Bryce.
So yeah, one of the biggest things that happened for FAU this year in 2021 is the announcement of joining the American Athletic Conference. They should be part of the conference by 2023. It's going to be pretty exciting as now that conference is actually going to be represented in the college football playoff with Cincinnati making it. Cincinnati won't be there by that time, but it'll put eyes on the conference, and FAU is going to be able to face people like SMU in football, who's had a very good historic program, and then they'll be able to face teams in basketball that have made historic runs like Memphis and Wichita State and bring those schools in, and they'll get a lot more national eyes on the school, so it's pretty big news. And they're making their way quickly through the ranks. They started independent, from 2001 to 2005. In 2005, they joined the Sun Belt, and then, just 8 years later, they moved to Conference USA, and now they're on to probably what's known as the best Group of Five school, and some even label it as Power Six school.
Yeah, there is no doubt that going to the American Athletic Conference will do wonders for FU sports, especially for football, who are while they haven't had the best season, they are certainly on to a better road of progress with the move to the AAC. And we're moving on to Kevin. So Kevin, what do you have to first start off with your mentions?
So the first one, we're going to talk baseball. So at FAU, in the beginning of the season, early on in the baseball season, they upset the University of Florida, the Florida Gators, 3-2 in an extra innings game. Yes, the game was not the most technically pleasing for true baseball diehard fans, but nevertheless, this was a big win for FAU. Michael Hardigan hit the game winner. TJ Stewart had a pretty solid outing, throwing 4 innings. Overall, it was a big win, arguably the biggest win for the FAU's baseball team last season. Now, we know the season didn't go as planned. They were projected to finish number 1 in Conference USA standings. We know how that worked out, but FAU beating Florida Gators 3-2 on the road, undoubtedly the biggest win of the season for them.
And just to clarify, it's not Michael Hardigan, it's Mitch Hardigan. But yeah, it was a great win for FU baseball against the Gators. Like, you're facing a nationally ranked team, especially one in the top 10 with the Florida Gators, who were ranked number 6 at the time. It was definitely a major win for the baseball team. And while the season did not go as planned after that win, as in earlier episodes that we noticed the dip in form following that win, but it was still a respectable season for the baseball team, and hopefully they do much better next season, which they did have their schedule announced recently. So looking forward to that once the spring semester comes. And next up is Eston. What do you have to mention first for best highlights?
Yeah, so Iggy Allen coming in and making a huge mark or leaving a huge mark with the women's team for the Owls in just one season with us. Um, I mean, she came in, became Conference USA's newcomer of the year, and alongside with that, she made all conference first team, all defensive team. She was player of the week multiple times, and she currently holds the Division 1's record for scoring average. She scored 22.2 points a game or this past season, and rebounding average 10.9 rebounds a game, which is impressive considering that. Well, for her rebounds, especially since not a she's not a center, she's not a big player. She's only 5'11". She came in and made a huge impact for the Owls. Every single week, we were talking about what crazy thing Iggy Allen did. So she was a lot of fun to have with the team. And when the Owls face her against Old Dominion, I'm hoping that she doesn't. It's one of those games where she's either somehow not playing or she has an off night, which an off night for her is probably still like 20 points and a huge contribution. So,
Yeah, we talked a lot about Iggy Allen and the impact she had for the women's basketball team last season. Like, we're gonna talk more about how women's basketball did last season as this episode goes on, but it was an incredible season for Iggy Allen and what she did that season, especially as she ended up winning the newcomer of the year, as you talked about, Eston. It was definitely something to highly respect about Iggy Allen's time at FAU. And for my mention, it will go to men's soccer as they beat the defending NCAA champions for the first time in their program history in the 3-1 victory over Marshall in the semifinals of the Conference USA tournament. Marshall, who were ranked 4th at the time of the game, they won the conference they won the national the NCAA tournament last season. So going into that game in the semifinals was a big one for FAU, especially after winning the penalty shootout against Charlotte in the quarterfinals. And it was pretty clear that FAU had a chip on their shoulder throughout the tournament because they did not play at their best during the regular season against Marshall, against Charlotte, and then of course Kentucky, who I'll get into in a bit. But it was pretty clear that FAU was determined to go as far as they can into the tournament, and they definitely made the most of it. As I said, they beat Charlotte in the penalty shootout after locking them down defensively throughout the entire 110 minutes, and then they just went off against Marshall, like one of the best offensive performances and including one of the best defensive performances. Even though they conceded a goal, they still overwhelmed Marshall with 3 goals. And as I'll talk about in one of my mentions, Ivan Mikalenko, he was part of those 3 goals. And then the dagger from Celestin Theodore Jr., who had an ankle breaker and sealed the deal with the with the 3rd goal for FAU. It was definitely something to admire about the way FAU men's soccer played throughout the tournament. And I'll talk more about their run later on in this episode. But it was a great moment for the men's team to beat a defending NCAA champion. And going back to Bryce, sorry.
So I want to swing things back to baseball a little bit because an FAU freshman made national history in his first 2 plate appearances. Caleb Pendleton, in his first 2 plate appearances in a game against UCF last season, he had 2 grand slams. It's something pretty impressive as he's only the 8th player to ever get 2 grand slams in his first 2 at-bats, but he did it in the same inning. That's never been done before. This came in the victory over UCF on February 20th, and at the time, UCF was ranked number 24 in the nation. They put up 20 runs against that school, and it was their 2nd straight victory. It was the 2nd game of the game. FAU won the game before, 12-6. Caleb Pendleton was not playing in that game because he was a freshman. They wanted to give him a little day to just watch how it would go. He came in that game, and nobody would have thought that a freshman would have 2 grand slams, maybe an RBI or 2, but to account for 8 runs, almost half the team's runs, was pretty impressive.
Yeah, Pendleton really surprised everyone in his first game, his first appearance, and his first 2 at bats, like grand slams. And it was a home game, right?
Yes, it was a home game, and even head coach John McCormack said he had never seen anything like it before, so it was pretty impressive. He's been coaching for a long time, so for him to say something like that is pretty high praise.
Yeah, definitely. All right, going up next is Kevin.
All right, so we have football now. I want to talk about the 2021 Shula Bowl. So FAU defeated FIU 58-21. You could say that this was the peak for the FAU men's football season. Um, After this, and Kosi Perry just didn't quite look the same. I know he was a little bit banged up towards the end of the season, but he didn't eclipse the 300-yard mark until the final game of the season. After this one, he was so efficient: 18 for 21, 329 yards, 3 touchdowns. It was just a great overall performance. Johnny Ford had 100 yards rushing. The overall rushing attack was phenomenal. I remember we covered this game. Me, you, Rich, and Eston. We covered this game, and we were just so impressed with how it went. And then we know how the season went, losing the last 4 games. But nevertheless, I think for me, you could argue that this was the most impressive and maybe not the biggest win, but the most impressive win of the season for the football team.
Well, undoubtedly the best offensive performance from the team. While it wasn't the best defensive performance against FIU, that the best defensive performance would go against Georgia Southern, where we only conceded like 6 points. But still, it was a great performance overall from FAU. And while the season did not go as planned, it was definitely a great moment as they did retain the Shula Bowl for a 5th consecutive time, which is, well, keeping a bowl title in your possession. It's not easy to do, but to do it 5 times in a row, even a lot harder. So it good for FAU football on that moment. And next up is Eston.
Yeah, so FAU soccer got their first winning season since 2007. We finished the season this year at 9-7-3, and honestly, as you mentioned, Richard, they ended super strong. This was, I would personally, I think this is the best team we've had since 2007. I think it's a fair statement considering how far they went in the conference tournament. And it was a really fun season for them. They have a lot of young players coming up, and the senior class is leaving behind a good foundation for the rest of the program. So
Yeah. Oh, well, the first winning season since 2007 came back in the spring where they had a record of 6-4-2. So to correct that, this season they did go 9-7-3, but it's still a winning season, and that will be mentioned later on. But yeah, that winning season back in the spring, it was definitely a great moment and a good sign of things to come for the program, and we saw that this past season in the fall. It was a good start for the program to start off 2021 with a winning record, their first since 2007, and we saw how much they capitalized on that in the fall. And for me, it would be what up? It would be about still in men's soccer, in the lane of men's soccer. It was about Ivan Mikalenko, who played a key role in the FAU offense as he ends his career with the 4th most goals scored all time for FAU with 22 of them. And he distributed those goals each and every season. In all 3 years he was with FAU, he scored 7 in his first year. He scored 6 in the spring campaign, and then ended it off with 9 goals in the fall. And he led the team for 3 straight seasons in goals scored. There is no doubt that Ivan Mikalenko made a huge impact on the program with his offensive goal scoring, with his accuracy as a shot taker, with his accuracy as a penalty taker. Like whenever he gets a penalty, like not pretty much 9 times out of 10 at the very least, he's going to score. Like there's just no stopping Mikalenko. He was that good of a goal scorer, and good to see. And it will be good to see where what he does moving forward. So hats off to Mikalenko for a great career at FAU, and wish the best of luck to him. And going back to Bryce.
I'm gonna swing things back to baseball, or not baseball, basketball for a little bit. The women's team did something they never did before in 2021. They won their first CUSA tournament game back on March 10th after a really good season in the fall of 2020, led by Iggy Allen, as was mentioned before. In that game, though, she had her 11th career double-double. She had 30 points and 16 rebounds and was giving player of the game honors. So that was pretty impressive. The team won 72-66 over UAB, and former head coach Jim Jabir won his 500th career game in Division I play. So overall, it was just a good game. It was a feel-good game for the team. But unfortunately, the next game, they did have an early exit. I'll talk about that a little bit more later, though.
Yeah. But yeah, it was still a great win for the women's team, their first win in a Conference USA tournament. And while they couldn't take it even further with another win and probably a deeper run into the tournament and possibly get into the title game, it was pretty clear that it was definitely a big moment for women's basketball, especially in Conference USA, where they haven't had the best of luck. But hopefully they can keep it up this season, as their season is underway. And while it's been up and down so far, they're still getting into the rhythm of things. But that moment last season was a great moment for them. And going to Kevin.
So I want to talk men's basketball. Dusty May, he became the fourth coach in FAU history to win 50 games as our coach. He did this in his fourth season, which he's currently in right now. And ever since he's been with FAU, he's coached us to a positive win season, or so far in his first 3 seasons. We'll see what this season looks like, but Dusty Bay has been just consistent as coach. He has good game plans. Overall, he's doing a great job, and this mark shows just that.
But yeah, Dusty May has pretty much been one of the most consistent coaches in FU history for the men's basketball program, and 3 straight winning seasons overall, really. But it's overall records that have been very consistent for Dusty May. 3 straight overall winning seasons. It's very hard to do that. So hats off to Dusty May for being a consistent winning coach, and hopefully we get a 4th consecutive winning season this season. And Eston?
Yeah, so going back to men's soccer, and Richard, as you corrected me, so we have FU men's soccer has gotten their first series of consecutive winning seasons since 2003 and 2004. And as we've both mentioned, the men's soccer team is just the program itself has improved a lot within the last few years, dramatically, I'd say. To now being able to be a true competitor for within the conference for the remainder of FU's time in Conference USA. And they have a lot of really good and talented players coming through. So it's a fun time to be a fan of FU soccer.
Yeah, it was definitely a great moment for the men's soccer team to do what they did. And like winning seasons, like back-to-back winning season for the first time since 2003 and 2004. It just shows you how long the program has come. Like they've had hard times for many seasons, and they're finally starting to hit their stride. And it's just great to see. And we're starting to see how the benefits are coming to fruition. Like we're starting to see the best of what this program can offer. In the spring, they were one of the best defensive teams. And then this season, they improved their offense dramatically because they found a great goal scorer in Philip Yock, who despite being a freshman, he still scored 8 goals second behind Mikalenko on the team. So it was definitely a great sign of progress for the team, and hopefully they keep it up in 2022. And for me, uh, not a sport that has been mentioned a lot throughout the past few years in sports coverage, really, but beach volleyball. And FU's beach volleyball team is no doubt one of the best of what FU has to offer in the sports category, as the beach volleyball team did win their conference championship, their first time in program history, as they beat FIU and Georgia State in the tournament to clinch their first conference title. And they did it like it was overwhelming. Like they showed that like this, besides the mainstream sports of FAU, you have beach volleyball that has been pretty much been dominant throughout their past season. And it was definitely a great moment outside of the big name sports, and you see a sport that has so much to offer with talented players on the team. And for the final round, we go back to Bryce.
So I want to go back to basketball, but I want to focus on both men's and women's basketball right now. For the first time in school history, both teams made the CUSA tournament. They both made it to the quarterfinals, which has never been done before. The women, like I mentioned, did lose in the quarterfinal round, though. They lost to UTEP by 7 after they had won their first ever game. And the men, they played UTEP in the first round and beat UTEP and won 76-70. So it was a tight game. And then they also did lose in the quarterfinal the next day, as both teams and both tournaments played in Frisco, Texas, where the University of North Texas hosted that tournament. But it was pretty exciting to see for the first time, both teams make that conference tournament for the basketball programs. And now, Dusty May is hoping for another great season this year. FAU brought a new head coach for the women's team in this year who has experience with big name schools like Tennessee. So they're hoping for big things to come once, they make that transition to the American Athletic Conference in a couple of years.
Yeah, it was definitely a noteworthy achievement for both men's and women's basketball to get to the quarterfinals within the same season. So hopefully they can keep that up this season with, of course, Dusty May. And as you mentioned, not directly, but we know who you're talking about, Jennifer Sullivan, who was off to not a bad start, but can definitely work out the flaws on the team. And hopefully they become there's more progress as the season goes on, and we see more wins from them, and hopefully they reach another quarterfinal appearance as well as the men's team. Kevin?
So staying with basketball, Michael Forrest, he scored his 1,000th point as a FAU Owl. And this came in FAU's most recent game against North Florida. He's the 14th player to do so, which, it just shows one thing. It shows he's been consistent. He's played all 4 seasons with FAU. Yeah, he hasn't always been a starter. He's been a role player for a lot of that time. But when he is inserted in the starting lineup, like he has been this season and he has been in for stretches in prior seasons, he puts up points. He knows where to be. He plays defense. He's a good playmaker. He does everything that the coach asked him to do. And yeah, it's a great achievement for him.
Yeah, Michael Forrest, he has been a key player throughout the starting rotation for men's basketball, especially throughout the past few seasons, and now more importantly this season, where he's taking on that leadership role. And for him to score his 1,000th point against North Florida this past week, it was definitely a great achievement for him, as it shows that he's not only is he a good shooter, he's also a good offensive player for FU to have in their back pocket, really. And Eston?
Yeah, so going back to men's soccer, they reached their first conference championship game since 2007. Unfortunately, losing to Kentucky in a close overtime matchup, but still, props to the team for making it to the conference championship win. I think very few people realistically gave them a shot. Defeating the host Charlotte in the first round in penalties was exciting in and of itself, but then defeating Marshall, the defending national champions, was huge. I think that's one of the biggest wins for the program in its history. And then, like I said, unfortunately losing in a close one to Kentucky was tough, but still really, really encouraging and really exciting times, for the program.
Yeah, it was a heartbreaking loss against Kentucky, who was ranked lower than Marshall at the time. But despite the lower ranking than Marshall, Kentucky was heavily talented on the defensive end. But FAU still managed to score against them. And FAU was up, well, 1-0 with 30 minutes remaining in the game. And that pretty much tells you that FAU was literally 30 minutes away from qualifying for its first NCAA tournament. Like, when you put that into perspective, it just shows how much how far the team has come. Like, going from bottom of the conference to literally being 30 minutes away from an NCAA tournament, that is something that the men's team has to take into account. Just be happy that they were able to go that far. And as far as they reached, they were so close, and there's still work to be done, as they couldn't get the golden one, as they lost 2-1, and especially in overtime with the game-winning goal from Kentucky. But it's definitely a great sign of things to come for the program. And for our last mention of the day, our last best highlight goes back to beach volleyball. And as I mentioned, they won their first conference title. Two players on that team who were responsible for that was Erica Brock and Mackenzie Morris, who is basically, as a dynamic duo, the best duo that the FAU beach volleyball program has had in its history. They basically share 71 wins together as a duo. Individually, it's Erica Brock who has the most with 72, and Morris with 71. But it undoubtedly goes to show you that those two dominated their roles on the team, and they reap their benefits. And it just shows that as a duo, they are capable of winning as many games as they like without question. And they do have the longest winning streak by a pair in school history with 19. So, and they are around for next season, and they're going to make sure that that record stays basically eternal. And those are our 16 best highlights for this episode of UPressPlay Sports. Make sure to hit like and subscribe. Click the bell to keep up with notifications from us. And also be sure to go on upressonline.com to keep up with news, sports, and more content alike. To follow us on Twitter, it's, for me, @risk26 Pereira. For Eston, it's at Eston Parker. For Kevin, @KevinGar658. And for Bryce,
At Bryce Totz, BRYCETOTZ.
all right. Thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day.